The first thing Marcus did when he returned home was present me with divorce papers, accompanied by his new girlfriend. In daily, he put his arm around Tiffany and told me, "This is Tiffany, my true love." I took a sip from my cup and said, "All right. Where are the papers?" His expression froze, the carefully prepared humiliation caught in his throat. He expected me to cry, to make a scene, to desperately beg him to come back. But he didn't know. 2 years ago, the night he cheated, I saw everything clearly in the courtyard of an apartment complex abroad. Marcus went abroad for 3 years of advanced studies. The first thing he did upon returning was not to come home. Instead, he called me. On the phone, he asked me to meet him at the Grind, the coffee shop we used to frequent. His voice was cold. I knew he was coming to talk about divorce. Coincidentally, so was I. When I arrived at the Grind, he was already waiting. Unusually, I was always the one who waited for him before. In front of the tall, floor-to-ceiling windows, another girl sat beside him. She wore exquisite makeup and a chic tweed suit, looking as if she had just stepped off the cover of a fashion magazine. Marcus's hand rested intimately on the back of the chair behind her. When he saw me sit down, the girl flashed a smile, a mixture of curiosity and a subtle sense of superiority. I didn't care, feeling only that she had picked up trash. Marcus cleared his throat, as if about to announce something important. "Grace, this is Tiffany. I met her in the States, and she made me understand what real love is." I looked at them both, expressionless. Marcus continued, "After 13 years together, what we had, it had become a relationship that had become a burden, not worth keeping but hard to let go of. This isn't love, it's more like we just got used to each other's presence." He pushed the divorce papers, already prepared, across the table. "Sign it," he added, "it'll be better for both of us. I'll make Sue. You're well provided for financially." Tiffany, sitting next to him, feigned pity and spoke softly, "Ms. Grace, I'm sorry to have to tell you this, but Marcus and I are serious." As pushed the divorce papers towards me, I stared at the pale mark on his ring finger, left by a ring worn for many years. He had removed it so completely, not a trace of hesitation left behind. Tiffany's fingers, with their nude pink polish, rested on his hand, the color like diluted blood. I had been mentally prepared for this for a while. After all, I had known about it 2 years ago. 2 years prior, on Marcus's birthday, I had booked a flight early, carrying a rare vintage collectible car model, one he had coveted in college and later claimed to have forgotten, which I had specially commissioned to be replicated. I crossed the ocean, planning to surprise him. But when I arrived at the apartment, he gave me a big surprise of his own. In the courtyard, the glass windows on the second floor reflected 2 figures, and disgusting sounds drifted out. Like an idiot, I stood in the cold rain of a foreign country, dragging my suitcase filled with the model and gifts. The hard corner of the model box pressed into my palm, a painful reminder of the absurdity of my journey. I didn't storm in to ask what he was doing. I just felt my blood run cold. Like a lost soul, I left the apartment. The bustling street was full of cars and people coming and going. I walked on, dazed and disoriented. In my blurry vision, giant headlights suddenly pierced through the rain, approaching rapidly, and a sharp horn blast tore through the chaos. In the nick of time, a powerful force yanked my arm. My body hit the cold, wet ground hard, my arm throbbing with pain. The screech of brakes was almost deafening. A truck stopped just inches from where I had been standing. The driver stuck his head out the window, yelling furiously, his voice fragmented by the rain. I lay on the ground, rain relentlessly pouring into my mouth and nose. All I could see was the blinding glare of the headlights and blurred, moving shadows. As I lay there, stunned, a hand with distinct knuckles suddenly appeared before me, palm facing up. "Can you get up?" A deep, calm male voice cut clearly through the rain and angry shouts. I grabbed that hand. It was steady and strong. He pulled me, soaked and disheveled, from the mud. "Grace, are you listening? Sign the papers." Marcus grew impatient with my prolonged silence. "Okay," I replied, my voice steady. "I brought a supplementary version of the agreement. I'll send it to you later. I'll take your copy. If there are no issues, we'll both sign." Marcus's pupils constricted sharply. He clearly hadn't expected such a reaction from me. After all, the first time I caught him flirting online, I was so furious I splashed hot coffee on his custom-tailored suit. Later, I just felt tired, too tired to even harbor resentment. Now, I didn't want to say anything at all. I added, "The detailed supplementary clauses involve the stock options I held in the company before our marriage, with the division ratio calculated based on last year's latest fair market valuation. Also, the appreciated value of the marital home, with the third-party appraisal report included. My tone was flat, my words as clear and methodical as if I were handing over a project at work. Tiffany's smile froze. She seemed displeased by my actions regarding the asset division. But this was my property to begin with. Her body unconsciously stiffened, her gaze darting between me and the file folder, revealing an ill-concealed panic. Marcus's face slowly darkened. He had carefully prepared various scripts to comfort me. Now, they were stuck in his throat, unable to come out. I ignored the two of them and pulled out my phone. Sarah had sent me the supplementary version of the divorce agreement. On WhatsApp, Sarah had left a message, "Mr. Ethan asked me to send this document to you." Marcus's face turned a shade of green with suppressed anger. "Grace," he said, his voice laced with fury, "what is the meaning of this? Were you planning to get rid of me all along? Do you think leveraging some assets will give you power over me?" Tiffany gently tugged on his sleeve, whispering, "Marcus, don't get angry." But her eyes were fixed on the agreement. She was actually very nervous. She feared I would take too much, impacting the lavish lifestyle she envisioned. I met Marcus's accusing gaze calmly. "You're overthinking it. I simply believe that if we're divorcing, we should both be straightforward. Once we sign, you go your own way, and I'll go mine." My phone vibrated again in my pocket. A text message popped up, "Is the discussion done? Do you need a ride?" I looked at the name in the contact, Ethan, and a relieved smile touched my lips. Marcus stared as I put away my phone, his brows furrowing tighter. "In such a rush to find a new partner?" I met his gaze. "Between the two of us, who looks more eager to replace their partner?" Marcus flinched as if stung, then abruptly stood up. "Fine. If you're ready, let's sign." Back in the conference room at the company, Ethan was already waiting for me. I took out the divorce papers. He took them and looked them over, then said, "There's freshly brewed coffee next to you. Try some." I said languidly, "I just came back from the grind." "I imagine you wouldn't have much appetite after seeing those two." I couldn't help but laugh. After reading it, Ethan said calmly, "The divorce agreement Marcus gave you has quite a few traps." I knew it in my heart. He wanted to gain a financial advantage. I was aware. Ethan nodded, saying nothing more. I took the agreement and picked up the pen, ready to sign. Above the Party A signature line on the blue agreement, his name, Marcus, was already boldly scrawled. I held the pen suspended over the blank space, a whirlwind of emotion swirling within me. 13 years. From our first meeting in the University library, his sunny smile revealing a canine tooth, to his first time holding my hand, to his red-rimmed eyes late at night after his business failed, to that day on a rainy street in New, seeing him passionately kiss that strange woman through the cold rain, the deep mark left on my palm by the hard corner of the model. And then, just now in the grind, his hasty eagerness to kick me out and the triumphant gleam in that woman's eyes. Scene after scene floated beneath the tip of my pen. There was no heart-wrenching pain, only a faded gray. The pen touched the paper. With 2 swift strokes, I signed my name. Grace let out a long breath beside me. "Once you've settled things, we'll get married." I couldn't help but tease, "I'm on my second marriage, and you're on your first. You're getting the short end of the stick." Ethan's lips curved slightly. "Not at all. I've been waiting a long time. Speaking of which, we had met once before. The year we graduated from college, the student union organized an inter-university business case competition. Our school and Ethan's top business school were rivals. In the finals, both sides battled fiercely, the atmosphere intensely strained. One of our team members became too nervous, and during his presentation, he was pressed by an opposing debater and couldn't respond for a moment. The situation became awkward and tense. Everyone was waiting to see us fail. At that moment, I inexplicably stood up and took the microphone. I don't remember exactly what I said, only that my voice wasn't loud, but every word seemed to carry an icy edge, clear and sharp, instantly exposing the logical trap they had meticulously set and also pointing out a subtle but fatal logical fallacy in their argument. The entire hall fell silent for a few seconds. Across from me stood a tall young man in a dark gray suit. To the astonishment of his teammates, he actually smiled. Instead of becoming angry and embarrassed, he even led a soft round of applause. There was a pure admiration for an opponent in his deep eyes. That was our first meeting. But at that time I hadn't paid much attention to Ethan, focusing all my energy on Marcus. After leaving the company, I prepared to go back to the mansion to pack my things and leave for good. As I returned to the mansion, I heard an argument from afar. I changed my shoes, ready to go upstairs to pack my things on the second floor. But, who was in the living room, rushed over, yelling furiously, "Was it you who complained? Is that all you're capable of? Too afraid to confront me, so you turn around and go crying for someone to back you up. I looked at his distorted face. I truly didn't want to admit this was the man I had known for 13 years. I responded calmly, I don't have time for that. Marcus exploded in anger, don't you dare pretend here. From a distance, Mrs. Miller's cold voice came from the courtyard, that vixen you just brought back, tell her to get out immediately. The family name is not for just anyone to sully. Margaret. Marcus's eyes turned red with anger, and he shouted, what are you talking about? Tiffany is my love. I ignored the drama downstairs and simply walked up to the second floor. I didn't have many belongings, so I finished packing quickly. On the dressing table, my jewelry box sat almost untouched, except for a few heirloom pearl earrings left by my mother, and a few silver stud earrings I bought in college. Marcus had given me many pieces of jewelry, from entry-level Cartier to Tiffany's classic key necklace. They lay in velvet jewelry boxes, glittering but cold, devoid of any emotion. I didn't touch those. In the deepest part of the drawer, there was another velvet jewelry box. Inside were 2 faded pressed maple leaves, and underneath them, a faded note, Grace and Marcus's first autumn, never apart. I suddenly couldn't breathe. That year, he held me under the old oak tree on campus, leaves falling like golden snow on our shoulders. Later, when his business failed, I stayed up late for 3 months helping him with financial reports. When I opened the window in the morning, I found he had secretly planted an oak sapling. Now that tree was very tall. Marcus followed me upstairs, anxiously handing me the signed contract. But when he saw that I hadn't touched the expensive jewelry, the words on his lips seemed to falter. Yet, as things stood, he still spoke. The papers are signed. From now on, you and I have nothing to do with each other. I acknowledged him, okay. After a brief silence, Marcus suddenly said, I bought a new house outside to live with Tiffany. If you still want to live here, no need. I cut him off. After zipping up my suitcase, I slowly stood up. Seeing my continued coolness, Marcus seemed to realize his previous words had been a slander. As if experiencing a pang of conscience, he said, you're not the type to go complaining. I was out of line just now. I apologize. I didn't speak. It seemed there had been too many misunderstandings like this. I had never cared before, but now, looking back, I felt incredibly foolish. That year, for her mother-in-law's 60th birthday party, I specifically hired a renowned caterer specializing in classic American cuisine and studied for 3 months. At 4 in the morning, I crouched in the kitchen, mincing meat, my wrists aching and trembling. A special family recipe for braised meatballs needed to be pounded hundreds of times to achieve the right texture. My palms were red from the pounding, thinking of how her mother-in-law always said she loved the taste of her hometown. At the dining table, I presented the clear braised meatballs, but, in front of everyone, slammed his fork down. Grace, my mother has had a long-standing dietary restriction against red meat for so many years. Are you doing this on purpose? The gazes of all the relatives at the table felt like knives. I opened my mouth, then heard her mother-in-law softly say, Mark. I asked Grace to make it. When you get old, you just want a taste of childhood. A week after signing the divorce agreement, I officially joined Sterling as their chief officer. Outside my office's floor-to-ceiling windows stretched the city skyline, sunlight streaming onto my new desk. Here's the latest project brief, Ethan said, placing a stack of documents in front of me. The client specifically requested you. I opened the file and was surprised to see the Prescott logo. Marcus's company? They're currently seeking Series B funding and need a professional financial team for due diligence, Ethan said, a slight smile playing on his lips. I suspect Marcus doesn't know you're leading this project. I closed the file and met Ethan's gaze. I'll take it. 3 days later, in the conference room at Prescott, I arrived punctually with my team. When pushed the door open, the file folder in his hand clattered to the floor. Grace? His voice was filled with disbelief. How are you? Good morning, Mr. Marcus, I said with a professional smile. Sterling has been commissioned by your esteemed company to conduct financial due diligence. I am the project lead. Marcus's face instantly turned unpleasant. He certainly remembered that before our divorce, I had offered to help him streamline the company's finances, an offer he rejected with what do women know about business? And now, he had to accept my professional scrutiny. Halfway through the meeting, I pointed out several significant loopholes in their financial model. Fine beads of sweat broke out on Marcus's forehead. He repeatedly signaled with his eyes for me to go easy on him, but I, strictly business, listed each risk point one by one. Based on our analysis, your company's current valuation needs to be lowered by at least 30%. My voice was calm and professional. Otherwise, it will be difficult to gain investor approval. Marcus abruptly stood up. Grace, let's talk privately. In the hallway corner, He grabbed my wrist. Do you have to take revenge on me like this? I gently pulled my hand away. Mr. Marcus, I'm just doing my job. And by the way, Ms. Tiffany's 200,000 purchase in Paris last month was charged to the company account. His face instantly turned ashen. That weekend, I was at Westfield selecting a birthday gift for Margaret. In front of the Cartier counter, as I tried on a wristwatch, I heard a familiar voice behind me. Tiffany, how about this one? Through the mirror, I saw Marcus and Tiffany standing at the jewelry counter. Tiffany pouted and shook her head. It's too old-fashioned. I want that limited edition one from last week's magazine. I turned around, the watch sparkling under the light. Please wrap this up. Marcus suddenly turned, his gaze falling on the watch on my wrist, then to the respectful store manager waiting behind me. Grace? When did you? Mr. Marcus, enjoying your leisure? I smiled and nodded. Shopping with your girlfriend? A flicker of jealousy crossed Tiffany's eyes, and she deliberately raised her voice. Honey, I want that $500,000 necklace, as a celebration of you getting the investment, okay? I chuckled softly. Congratulations, Mr. Marcus, but... I lowered my voice. Just a reminder, that investment agreement includes a performance-based investment clause. If next year's profits don't reach 80% of what's promised, you'll be personally liable. Marcus's face changed instantly. How do you know? Because. I adjusted my sleeve, that investment firm is under my name. Good luck. As I left, I heard Tiffany's disgruntled complaints and Marcus's irritated explanations behind me. The sunlight streamed through the Westfield's glass roof onto me, warm and pleasant. Monday morning, I had just arrived at the office when Sarah rushed in. Director, you're making national financial headlines. The screen displayed the newly released 30 under 30-foot list of top financial professionals, and my photo was prominently featured. The accompanying text detailed several successful cases I had spearheaded, including helping 2 startups go public. My phone started vibrating incessantly. The university alumni group had exploded, with someone tagging me. Grace, you're amazing. Marcus must be furious seeing this. I was about to reply when an unknown number called. Grace. Marcus's hoarse voice came through. I saw the news. Is there something you need? I continued browsing my emails. I'd like to invite you to dinner. His tone held a hint of flattery I hadn't heard in years. To celebrate your achievements. No need, I'm very busy. Just one dinner, he suddenly exclaimed. I regret it, Grace. Tiffany doesn't understand me at all. I just realized how amazing you are. I hung up immediately and blocked the number. That was his definition of true love, how quickly his true love shifts. When I looked up, Ethan was leaning against the doorframe, holding 2 cups of coffee. A confessional call from my dear ex-husband? He handed me a cup. Just a temporary fit of regret, I took the coffee. He'll get over it eventually. Ethan chuckled. I'm afraid this time it's different. He opened his phone to show me social media. Tiffany had just posted vacation photos from the Maldives, captioned solo travel is wonderful too, with her location indicating she was no longer in the country. I shook my head. Marcus's investment funds haven't fully arrived yet, have they? As far as I know, the first installment arrived last week. Ethan winked. Just enough for a one-way ticket to the Maldives. On evening, I was organizing presentation materials for the following week when Margaret suddenly visited. Grace, she said, her expression serious as she entered. Marcus came to see me today. I put down my files. What did he say? He said he regretted the divorce and wanted to get back with you, Margaret sighed. He also said you never told him about your achievements in the investment world, and if he had known sooner. If he had known sooner, he would have exploited me even earlier? I scoffed. Margaret, you don't actually believe that, do you? Margaret hesitated. He did seem very upset, and you two did have 13 years of history. I opened my phone, pulled up a video, and handed it to Margaret. The footage showed Marcus embracing Tiffany at a bar, celebrating wildly. The timestamp showed it was 3 months before our divorce. This is his so-called pain. I turned off the video. Margaret, true pain was what I saw that rainy night and knew, and the look on his face when he presented me with divorce papers, accompanied by his new girlfriend. Margaret fell silent. After a long moment, she gripped my hand. Your mother was foolish. Are you doing well now? Very well. Better than ever. A month later, at the annual financial summit, I was the keynote speaker, analyzing emerging market trends. The hall was packed, and I spotted Marcus in the crowd. During the QA session, he eagerly raised his hand. Director's analysis is brilliant, but isn't your proposed risk management solution overly idealistic in practice? The room fell silent, everyone heard the challenge in his voice. I smiled faintly. Mr. Marcus poses an excellent question. Coincidentally, I can use your company as an example. The large screen switched to a case study I had prepared in advance. The company name was omitted, but industry insiders knew exactly who it was. Professionally and incisively, I pointed out a series of missteps Prescott made in its Southeast expansion. Had professional advice been followed in a timely manner, I looked directly at Marcus. At least 300 million in losses could have been avoided. The hall erupted in an uproar. Marcus's face turned from red to white, then ultimately livid. After the session, he cornered me at the lounge door. You did that on purpose. I was merely answering a question, I said, organizing my notes. And by the way, congratulations to Ms. Tiffany on surpassing 100,000 followers on Instagram. Her new Hermes bag looks lovely. Marcus looked as if he'd been struck by lightning. How do you know she? Because her verified account, at Mrs. Tiffany Miller, just posted a screenshot of your credit card statement yesterday. I looked at him with pity. It seems she didn't tell you? 2 weeks later, the financial news broke a major story. Prescott's CFO was under investigation for alleged financial fraud, and the company's stock plummeted. My phone was bombarded with calls from Marcus. Finally, I answered. Grace, help me. His voice was hoarse. Only you can solve this crisis. Why me? Because. He swallowed hard. You've always been the one who understands the company's finances best. I scoffed. You certainly didn't say that before the divorce. Long silence on the other end, then suddenly the sound of shattering glass. I was wrong. Marcus's voice was tearful. Those investors are going to sue me. If this continues, I'll have to liquidate his assets. Marcus, I said calmly, do you remember what you told me in the university library during our senior year? What? You said that a true businessman must first be responsible for his own choices. I hung up the phone and switched it to airplane mode. Outside, Ethan's car was already parked downstairs. Tonight was the day we had arranged to meet each other's parents, and Marcus's drama could finally be put to rest for good. Inside the grand hall at the Metropolitan Center, crystal chandeliers cast a cold light. Marcus had finally reached this point, to liquidate his assets. And I was there to reclaim what was mine. I sat in the front row, tapping my bidding paddle, while Ethan flipped through the auction catalog beside me, occasionally discussing things in a low voice. Next up is the last batch of quality assets under Prescott. The auctioneer adjusted his glasses. An oceanfront estate, starting bid 20 million. The full panorama. Mic view of the White Mansion appeared on the large screen, floor-to-ceiling windows facing the sea, 2 Adirondack chairs on the terrace. 3 years ago, Marcus had held me and said, once the company goes public, we'll go there for our second honeymoon. 15 million. I raised my bidding paddle first, immediately lowering the price by 5 million. The entire hall gasped. The financial headlines had recently been dominated by news of my acquisition of Prescott's debt. Everyone knew the true meaning of this auction. Are you insane? Tiffany shrieked, standing up from the back row. This house is worth at least 25 million. She wore an ill-fitting Chanel suit that day, with the diamond feather brooch Marcus had given her pinned to her lapel, purchased with the collateral from our marital home. The auctioneer tapped his gavel. According to bankruptcy liquidation proceedings, the starting bid is determined by the court. The current highest bid is 15 million. Are there any further bids? Marcus clutched his bidding paddle, his knuckles white. His suit was wrinkled, and dark circles hung under his eyes. The once dashing Mr. Marcus now looked like a desperate gambler. 20 million, he suddenly raised his paddle, his voice hoarse. This is my absolute limit. I shook my head gently. 16 million. Grace. Marcus abruptly stood up. Do you have to humiliate me like this? Mr. Marcus, I calmly opened my file folder. I am merely bidding according to market principles. After all, I signaled for Sarah to connect the projector, and an appraisal report appeared on the large screen. This mansion has severe structural issues, with estimated repair costs of 8 million. Of course, if Mr. Marcus insists on a high price. You're lying. Tiffany rushed forward, trying to grab the laser pointer. We just last month. She suddenly stopped, her face pale. Just what? I smiled, pulling up the next photo. Just took a real estate agent to see the house. What a coincidence, that agent is my college classmate. The photo clearly showed a large crack in the wall, dated last week. Marcus staggered back 2 steps. Impossible, this house. It was bought with our joint assets. I closed the file. Now, it's time for it to return to its rightful owner. The auctioneer struck his gavel definitively. Sold for 16 million. Tiffany suddenly threw herself at Marcus, as if going mad. It's all your fault. You just had to buy that ridiculous yacht. Now even the house is, she slipped, tumbling into a display case. With a crash, the diamond feather brooch bounced to my feet. I bent down to pick it up, examining it against the light. Interesting. The GIA number indicates this is a lab-grown diamond. Impossible. Tiffany shrieked, reaching for it. I paid 800,000. She suddenly fell silent. Marcus, his face livid, pulled out a stack of papers. A Swiss jeweler's authentication report? Tiffany, you told me last month you pawned the brooch to help me raise a security deposit? The entire hall erupted in murmurs. As I accepted the property title documents, Ethan whispered in my ear, the repair crew is already on standby. That wall is actually very sturdy. Under the lights, Marcus was yelling, pulling Tiffany's hair, while she hysterically clawed at his face. This mansion, once a vessel for lies, had finally become a mirror reflecting true character. 2 weeks later, explosive news rocked the financial world. A financial self-media account published a lengthy article titled Unveiling the Elite Investor's Rise to Power, implying I gained resources through improper means and insinuating I was involved with multiple investors. I was in a meeting when Ethan, his face grim, pushed the door open and placed a tablet in front of me. The article's comment section had already exploded, with the top comment reading, "This kind of woman deserves to be dumped by Mr. Marcus. I heard her skills in bed are why she climbed D so fast." The IP address has been traced, Ethan said, his voice cold. It's Marcus's company office. I, conversely, smiled. He's finally resorting to desperate measures. That afternoon, my legal team did 3 things simultaneously. First, sent a cease and desist letter to the platform demanding the article's removal. Second, filed a lawsuit against the defamatory self-media. And third, requested access to Marcus's company's network records. At 10 that night, Marcus, drunk, pounded on my door. On the surveillance footage, his tie was askew, his eyes bloodshot. "Grace, do you have to push me to my death?" As security guards escorted him away, he shrieked hysterically, "Do you think Ethan really loves you? He's just after your resources, just like I was." I turned off the monitor and texted Ethan, "Is the press conference ready for tomorrow?" On the day of the press conference, I appeared in a sharp white suit. Below the stage, reporters wielded a barrage of cameras, and in the front row sat a pale Marcus. "Before responding to the rumors, please watch a video, everyone." I signaled for the staff to play it. The large screen showed footage of Marcus at the club, bragging to several investors. Grace? All her investment plans were taught by me. Now she's pretending to be so virtuous, but back in my bed. The video suddenly switched to a screenshot of Marcus's money transfer to the self-media, for an amount of 500,000, with the note to ruin Grace. The hall erupted in an uproar. I calmly delivered the final blow, Marcus's company's actual financial audit report, which clearly showed records of him embezzling public funds to buy luxury items for Tiffany. "Mr. Marcus," I looked directly at the trembling Marcus, "you are suspected of defamation, commercial fraud, and embezzlement of public funds. My lawyers will provide detailed explanations shortly." When the police appeared at the venue, Marcus suddenly knelt. "Grace, I was wrong. For the sake of our 13 years together." I turned and walked away from the podium, his broken sobs echoing behind me. 3 months later, Marcus's case went to court. I testified as a victim. Marcus, in the defendant's box, was emaciated, his eyes sunken, his suit hanging loosely on him. When the judge announced 3 years in prison, he suddenly began to frantically hit himself, tearing at his clothes. In the chaos, his custom-tailored suit ripped, revealing the Tiffany heart embroidered on the lining. A burst of mocking laughter erupted from the public gallery. Tiffany, ever since he began to liquidate his assets, had already absconded with funds and never reappeared. On the day of the final verdict, I received a letter forwarded from the prison. Marcus wrote in a trembling hand, "Grace, every day I think, how wonderful it would have been if none of those things had happened that rainy night and new." I scoffed, tossing the letter into the shredder. "At that time you enjoyed the present more than anyone. Such belated displays of affection are not genuine love, they are merely calculations of personal gain." Thank you for watching today's story. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like and share it with your friends. We look forward to hearing your thoughts in the comments. Feel free to share your perspectives, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more exciting stories. See you next time.